Let's talk about graphs of lines. It's key before we get started that you know that 2 points determine a line. What do I mean by that? If you know that any 2 points in the xy plane are on a line, so for example, say we know that point is on a line and that point is on a line, then we know for sure what the line looks like. So there's only one line that goes through these 2 points, and it's the one you get when you connect them. Connect them, and then if you extend it, there's only one single line that goes through those 2 points. So if you're trying to graph a line or come up with a graph of a line equation, then knowing 2 points on it, that's all you need. Okay, so let's look at an example of how to graph a line. So we're going to graph this line, y equals 2x minus 3. Now, my preferred method for graphing lines is to use the y equals mx plus b form. So if you have a line that's in this form, y equals mx plus b, it's actually really nice because you can read off the y-intercept, which is where the graph crosses the y-axis, and then you can also read off the slope. And knowing the y-intercept and the slope is enough to get you the graph of the line. Okay, so let's look over here. We can see that the y-intercept, or b, is -3. So we can see that b equals -3. This means that the graph crosses the y-axis at -3. So if we go down to y is -3 down here, we know that this point at y equals -3 is on our line. So if you're going to graph this way, your first step is to plot the y-intercept. Now we also know that m, or the slope of the line, is 2. And knowing the slope will give us a second point on the line. Now, when you don't have a fraction for your slope, it's actually useful to rewrite it as a fraction, because then you're going to know what the rise of the line is and what the run of the line is. So it's always rise over run. So rise is how far, like, up, down you need to go to get another point. So this is like the up, down to get another point, and then run is like the right, left to get another point. So the idea is that if we start at our point at y equals -3 and then we go up 2 and right 1, we'll get a second point on the line. So from that point at -3, I'm going to go up 2 over 1 to get another point. So here's what I did. Take a look at the graph. I went up 1, 2, and then right 1. Once you have 2 points on the line, you can connect them, and you have a graph of the line. Now, just a quick note, the reason we went up, so the reason I went up and right is because of how these numbers are positive. So these are both positive numbers, positive, positive. If you have negative for one of them, you can go down if it's a negative on the top, or left if it's a negative on the bottom to get your second point. Okay, let's look at another example. In this example, this time we have an equation, we have a graph, and we want to find the equation. So take a look at this graph. How am I going to do this? Well, I'm going to use a similar sort of concept as we did in the other example. So I'm going to try to come up with the equation for this in y equals mx plus b form. So and I know that in this form for a line, b is where the y-intercept is, and m is the slope. So what I can do is I can try to look at this picture and think, okay, do I know what b is? So do I know what b is? So b is the y-intercept. It's where the graph crosses the y-axis. Do I know what that is? And if you look at the picture, you actually do. So if we start at y equals 0 and count down 1, 2, you can actually see that this graph crosses, oops, that's not 3, that's 2. We can see that the graph crosses the y-axis at y equals 2. So that tells us that b is equal to -2. And that's great because I can actually fill that in to this equation here. I can put -2 in the b spot. Now all we need to know is what m is. So we just need to know what is m, or what is the slope of this line? Now, to find the slope, we can actually identify another point on the line and then figure out like how many counts we have to go up and over to get to that other point. So notice that it looks like this right here is another point on the line. In other words, it looks like at -2, 1, we have another point on the line. So I'm going to figure out how far up do we need to go to get to that point, and how far to the left do we need to go. So it looks like we need to go up 1, 2, 3. So 3 is the rise. And then we need to go to the left 1, 2. So 2 is the run. But because we're going to the left instead of to the right, I'm going to say we're going -2 over. So left would be like negative. Okay, now I know m is equal to rise over run, and our rise is 3, while our run is -2. So this tells us that our slope is -3/2. So the slope of this line is -3 over 2, and y is equal to that. So when you have this negative here in the denominator of a fraction or in the numerator, you can then just like sticking it in the front of the whole fraction is the same, considered the same thing. So if you have a minus sign in the front of a fraction, it's the same as having the minus on the bottom or the top. So essentially our equation then, like the equation for this line here in our picture is y equals -3 over 2x minus 2. And the way that we've done this is we have identified the y-intercept, or b, and then we have counted to find the slope, and then you fill into the b spot and the m spot in the y equals mx plus b form what those numbers are.